Go Who's and welcome to the 434 defense. My name is Deuce Prince. I'm a Charlottesville, Virginia native, lifelong UVA football fan, and former college offensive lineman. And today on the show, we're going to be looking on the offensive side of the ball against North Carolina State. And for the task, I have another offensive lineman, Charlottesville native, and lifelong UVA football fan, my brother James Prince. James, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great, Deuce. Finally got some great weather out here in Indiana, so just been enjoying taking that all in before we get back into some the craziness of that is August and September. So just been trying to take it all in.
And has high school football started out in the great state of Indiana yet?
Yep. So week one just finished up. So a lot of my guys were able to kick off their first varsity games or get started, and it's been fun to watch them. And I've certainly got my own slate of games for the guys that I've been training and working with, as well as as we get into college here in the next few weeks, been able just I can't believe we're back to football. It feels so good, and we talked about it last episode, but it finally feels that this long off season is almost over, and so I just can't wait to get back into it.
Do you have your weekend slate already prepared for the weekend? Like high school, then what games you're watching on Saturday and then into Sunday?
So I got two games to be watching out for. Shout out my guys up at Lebanon. The Lebanon Tigers got three offensive linemen that I work with. They're playing their cross county rivals, Western Boone, over in Western Boone,
We both.
and so that'll be a really good game. And then I believe we had sent you the message. There is a bunch of games tomorrow. I'm really excited for this Maine Towson game and then Stony Brook Dell State. And people watching this video may be like, "Who?" But trust me, we're getting to the nitty gritty of real college football here. At this point, I'm willing to take whatever games I can get.
I can go further. I believe Drake hosts South Dakota School of Mines tomorrow.
Oh,
And
oh,
if
don't
you've
don't
ever
get me
had the
going.
privilege of interacting with anyone who's worked at Colorado Mines, South Dakota Mines, they're all you probably saw Colorado School of Mines. They do the crazy photos in like the team photos every single year. They're all just kind of wired a little bit differently, wired with I assume the timing wire for dynamite. But but it is really nice to have football back in on Saturday. The University of Virginia finally kicks off their 2026 season in Charlottesville, Virginia against the North Carolina State Wolfpack. James, just in general, before we dive deep on the offense, how are you feeling with T minus 3 days as of recording heading into this game?
I feel great. I think you're finally have gotten through the camp portion that we had talked about last episode about just the daily grind and the daily work that you go in weekday and week out, and now you're finally back into your week schedule of preparing for a team, having scout looks, understanding run concepts, pass concepts, what we're doing in certain situations. This is where the part of the season where you actually can get to dive into different special things as you face an opponent week to week. So I'm very excited to see how the Cavaliers do this weekend.
We finally got uniforms for this game. Virginia's going white lid, orange jersey, orange pants for the opener
Okay.
in accordance with the Paint the Town Orange campaign. There's been no confirmation yet, but I believe Scott is going to sell out for this game.
Uh, it, I haven't checked the weather. I'm hoping just how it is here in Indiana. I'm hoping that there's going to be good weather, but I can't imagine the first a lot of for I would imagine for UVA this is probably the first week back for a lot of students. What better way to spend your Saturday than a week zero matchup for with your school, man?
On the Cavs Corner episode, I was talking about some of the effects of Virginia football having on the entire university. Applications for this year's academic year for the first years was up 27% year
Hmm.
over year. And so I imagine that this being a first game for a lot of first years at the University of Virginia, this is like you couldn't scheme it up better because if we did play in Brazil, their first game would have been against Norfolk State. And like all love to my guys at Norfolk State, Mike Vick, Elton Brown, all those guys. Like it just doesn't have the same punch as this game. And this 2026 NC State Wolfpack defense has gone under a lot of change. If we want to get right into kind of the leaders of this 2025 Wolfpack defense, Caden Fordham, Cian Sloan, and Tra Thomas were kind of the leaders in most defensive categories. Caden led in tackles and interceptions. Sloan led in QB hurries, and then Tra Thomas was the sacks leader. James, when you watched this 2025 unit for NC State, how was your kind of vibe going into this defense?
Kind of one of the biggest things I saw that, they're not your traditional, four down look. They throw a lot of different personnel, a lot of different coverages, a lot of different alignments up on defense.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that does for an offensive line and offense just in general is that you have to constantly be doing a lot of checks, a lot of reads. The quarterback has to be in total communication with the offensive line. The offensive line has to be communicating with everybody. And so when you have all these various looks, you have to practice them and you have to go into it. And so that can take away from your aggression and from where you're trying to get at to versus if you're just playing a base defense, right? So if you're getting a lot of different looks at you, a lot of different coverages thrown at you, you have to kind of maybe slow down, break down the playbook just a little bit and go back to the plays and go back to the things that that are like your bread and butter.
It's almost kind of counterintuitive. I feel like facing a very multiple defense is almost better early in the season because everyone's mentally a little bit fresher and you haven't gone through the entire season. James, I don't know about you, like whenever we went into a game plan for a week and it was just kind of bog standard defense, like if you played that for 4 or 5 weeks, you'd start to get into a routine and then all of a sudden, we've got to face this super multiple defense. It almost catches guys off guard because they're now out of routine, whereas they've just got out of camp. They're still fresh in their minds.
Well, of course, one of the big things about camp, especially from an offensive perspective, is that you want to get a lot of different looks, right? And be prepared for the things that you're going to see during the season. And playing a school like NC State is great because then when you go further down into the season, and let's say you're having these different formations and different alignments, this is one of the games that you're always going to be watching on film during the week of being like, hey, when we were facing this four down front and Mike linebacker mugs up, here's how we did it against NC State. And you can use that as a reference point going forward. So when you get the opportunity to face a lot of different looks, it's challenging, but if you are able to handle that and figure out what works for your offense, you can then apply that going forward to any other defense that uses those type of schemes.
And getting these guys early, you kind of see who they are at their ideal state. And every staff does this, no matter how good or bad they are, but you always do have to prepare for the event that you have to play a team again. And there is a non-insignificant shot that this game gets played later on further in the season. I will not dare jinx it by saying when we would play NC State again, but it's always good to get those initial looks when you play a team. And, like as we found out last year, it's hard to beat a team twice, but with such distance, the first game on August 29th feels like a whole different decade than the last game of the season for a lot of teams. So it's always an interesting look week one if you have to play them again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think I maybe had the opportunity to play a school. Actually, no, I've never been able to play a school twice, at least in college. So it's one of those opportunities that when you get it, I just thinking back to the days in high school, like it adds a significant layer of importance to that. That hey, if this is a team that we're going to be facing down the line, you want to make sure that you're bringing your A game because if not, when you face them again, the other team's going to be watching that film just as much as you are and being like, hey, if we found what worked in that game, they're going to best believe they're going to be using it a lot more when you face them the second time.
Right, and these leaders for the Wolfpack here, Fordham, Sloan, and Thomas, all three of them are no longer with the Wolfpack. They've moved on to the next level of the game, and so the NC State coaching staff here has had to do a lot over the 2025 into 2026 offseason. James, is there anyone here on this defensive staff that stands out to you as someone who might have an impact on this game?
I think, you look at the linebackers, I think for NC State, whether it's the inside or outside linebackers, I think just in general, the play of college football has relied so much on these guys who are, your 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", that are anywhere ranging from 220 to 250, right? And they can just play at a multitude of positions.
Right.
And it's something that you've seen now in the NFL where you have guys that have to play, that have to respond to playing multiple positions, where
Hmm.
it's Sam, Mike, Will, whether it's Rover, where it's playing as one of the nickel linebackers. Like these are the type of players now in the game that make such a huge, determining factor in who wins on each side of the ball.
Absolutely. And I think you on this side of the ball for NC State, you can really see Dave Doran's kind of coaching tree grow. He's a defensive guy by trade before he got into head coaching roles at Northern Illinois and then NC State. So his focus, he is a defensive guy at heart. So you see guys like Alicia Shaw and Isaiah Moore, who both were former players for Doran, who are now on the staff. And when you've been tenured this long, one of our viewers commented that he's the fourth longest tenured coach in FBS and the second longest in the ACC, only behind Dabo Swinney in the conference. This is something that shows a true like coaching tree develop when you have former players come on to the staff to be assistants. So it's going to be
Oh,
very, very interesting to see how experienced and on the same page this staff is.
well, even I remember in high school, I was very lucky to have the opportunity to visit NC State.
Hmm.
And one of the marquee players that they had just, were promoting at the time was Bradley Chubb.
Yes.
He, the outside linebacker for the Bills now. But, they, NC State has been a type of program that has been developed a lot of really successful players on the defensive side of the ball.
Hmm.
And like you said, with Dave Doran being a defensive minded coach, that is something that they will certainly want to take pride in and make a emphasis going forward to start this season, that they start well on the defensive side of the ball.
Defensive head coaches, it's something that's always so interesting to track because a lot of offensive head coaches will still want to be very involved on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's coaching the quarterbacks or being the main play caller or being the offensive coordinator in all but title. Whereas defense, I feel like it's a little bit harder to be the defensive play caller as a head coach. So I feel like not Dave Doran is obviously a resource to a guy like DJ Elliott, but DJ Elliott is definitely putting his own stamp on this kind of defense because Doran has to have his mind in so many different places with the offense being on the sidelines and getting ready for special teams for head coaching responsibilities.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think as a head coach, you don't see that many defensive play callers, like you're saying.
Hmm.
I think it kind of limits to the offensive side of the ball just because um, as a defensive coach, if you watch some of the on the sideline, or actually a lot of coaches now, especially the defensive coordinators, they're up in the box because they're just trying to see the entire view of the field, and
Yes.
all they're focusing on is what the form, what the personnel is for the offense. What formation are they in? Okay, well, here are the tendencies that they run from this formation with this personnel. And the defensive coordinators that I've been around that have been successful, these guys are just fully ingrained and fully obsessed with the offensive side of the ball of their opponent. And as a head
Yes.
coach, like, you may want to be involved in that. It's just hard to do that, like you're saying, with all the other responsibilities that you have to do as a head coach.
I mean
So
the
it
DC
takes a lot.
the DC is going to want to be right next to the GA who's padding the game and get as close to the information source as possible, like grabbing his legal pad and being like, "Let me see these notes. Is that
Oh yeah,
right?"
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'll have, coaches will have 3 or 4 guys who are writing down, what the formation and what the play is, what the result was, and just making sure that when the defense comes back off the field, those coaches can then look at the script and be like, okay, here's what happened, here's what we need to adjust. And it's just a constant chess game, right? Of just constantly taking the data that they've taken from the field and figuring out what they need to do to make adjustments or what they need to keep doing to be successful.
It's so funny the growth of football staffs. There was a picture posted of the Oregon staff, and it looked like a all hands meeting at a mid-sized startup. Like there were at least 50 people in there, and I was thinking, man, like Don Shula did this with like 3 other guys in a yellow legal pad. And so like if you've ever seen the videos of like coaches coming down the elevator or running down the stairs after a big win and you see like 10 of those guys hyped, that'll be like the defensive coordinator, one position coach, maybe the corners, the DNs, and then just the army of graduate assistants that are writing down every single event that occurred on the field. And defensive head coaches, I feel like people kind of assume that defensive coaches do a little bit better as head coaches, and I think that does bear out statistically, and I think it's largely because they don't occupy themselves with actually play calling all that much.
Yeah. I think when you're able to not with play calling, there's just a constant need to be like, okay,
Hmm.
staying on top of my script and then just having to block out everything else, right?
Right.
So if you're a defensive head coach, I mean, I just think of the guys, who have been most successful, like Kirby and Saban, and like these guys who have had success, they're able to manage the entirety of the game and not have to worry about one side of the ball.
Right. And then speaking of kind of the defensive side of the ball, I want to look at the NC State defensive lineup. I believe NC State has not released their two deep yet. We're still waiting on that. So this is from two deep. In yellow, we have transfers, and almost half of this Wolfpack defense is made up of transfers. We've got King Mack back there as the free safety. Both linebackers are transfers, Popo Aguirre and Desiree Nelson, and then Harvey Dyson on the defensive end side of things, and then Andre Owens leading out the corner group there. With college football being in such a different place right now, James, you played right as the transfer portal was really starting to heat up. Talk about on the defensive side of the ball how the transfer portal can affect how cohesive a group on the defensive side is.
Well, it's so important now, just the fact of having to be able to get the spring ball and the summer reps.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when I was playing, you still had the availability of the two transfer portal windows of after the season, right, and then after spring ball. So I think now with the elimination of one of the transfer portal windows, that really makes sure that okay, the guys who are in, they're in,
Yeah.
and you're just trying to get as many reps as you can. Obviously, we know in this day and age, there's going to be at this level of college football, there's going to be a lot of transfers,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to be able to take all the information, whether it's on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, and be able to compartmentalize it and shrink it down, so that way everybody's understanding and everybody's on the same page. That way you can pick it up week one. Because
Yes.
best believe, right? Like it's hard. You can see who's NC State has a lot of returners for a defense and for a transfer portal team this age, right?
Yeah.
But they have watching the 2025 film is important because especially with a staff like this, you're going to understand that maybe the players are different, but the schemes, the tendencies, those things are going to try to largely remain the same.
Right. One guy I want to highlight that I think is going to be a super interesting guy is Harvey Dyson there at that kind of, they listed as a joker role. He came from Tulane, and it's always very interesting when a group of five or group of six coach gets promoted over to the Power Four with John Summerall taking that Florida job. There, you would expect a level of transfer portal attrition at Tulane. I always find it very interesting to track the guys that do transfer, but transfer elsewhere in the Power Four and not to another program, whether that could be, Dyson saw that there were other guys coming in to Florida or just genuinely NC State kind of stood out in the transfer portal. I thought he was a very good player at Tulane. Is there anyone else on this defense that, kind of stands out when you've watched them play?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, Harvey had, he led Tulane in sacks last year with eight, had 11 and a half tackles for loss. So he's someone that I think is going to be successful. I think Popo Aguirre is going to be another player that's going to be an impact player. Obviously, he only played in about 10 games
Mm-hmm.
in 2024 and then played in 2025 at Miami. He wasn't one of the marquee starters of that Miami
Mm-hmm.
defense, but, he was someone that had 43 tackles in the season, had 6 tackles at Syracuse and against Notre Dame. So he's someone that's been around, especially the success that both schools at Virginia and NC State want to be at, right?
Yes.
Being at that top level of the college football playoffs and being around, he's had to, at linebacker, he's had to direct guys like Ruben Bain and the multitude of draft picks that Miami had.
Right.
He's going to be someone that I think a lot of the guys on this team will probably look towards for leadership and lean on him to step up their play as they go through the season.
He's one of the many guys in the much publicized South Florida success that NC State has had in the transfer portal. CJ Bailey, quarterback, we talked about him last week, staying at NC State. He actually kind of was the recruiting pitch that these guys needed to come to Raleigh. Basically, hey, I went from Miami to NC State. I like the staff here. They've done right by me. Let's go do our thing at NC State. It's in the transfer portal, it creates these pipelines that didn't usually exist out of kind of thin air. You'd think NC State would recruit the Carolinas and Virginia, not as much South Florida, but CJ Bailey has actually kind of given them this in South Florida, and it's one of the most interesting things I think that we've seen in the transfer portal era is like, a kind of like pipeline that comes up out of nowhere because you were able to hit on a specific player.
Well, another interesting pipeline. You look at this defense, Dakari Nelson and King Mack both coming from Penn State.
Yes.
I think that's extremely interesting. King Mack is someone that he actually transferred. He enrolled at Penn State, transferred to Alabama in 2024, and then came back to Penn State and had 58 tackles last year and interception through pass breakups. And then you have a guy like Dakari Nelson, who's a junior, who didn't start any of the games last year, but he appeared in all those games. So he's someone that was probably brought in as someone, hey, we can get this guy developed, that they were able to probably recruit King Mack and then be able to get Dakari Nelson in as well. And when you have those transfers with one or two guys that you're saying, whether it's with Miami or Penn State, you want to take all the teammate cohesion and all the relationships that you can get.
Absolutely.
I think that's an extremely underrated aspect of this game now.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be one of the better units in the ACC. I think Miami obviously is going to have a leg up on the defense side of the ball, but I think I'm not outlandish for saying I would say this is a perfect fifth best defense in the ACC. Like, they will shut people down on like every other weekend, and then there might be kind of a weird game every now and again, but you can always pretty much count on them to be top half every given Saturday. Speaking, James, of kind of the cohesion and kind of the group dynamics that have developed, I want to take a look at the Cavalier offense, which we now finally have an official two deep for Virginia as of yesterday, with some notable kind of deviations from the normal two deep structure. So obviously the well-publicized offensive line with Mikhail Bully at left tackle, Noah Josie at left guard, Drake Metcalf at center, McKeelan Thomas at right guard, and Monroe Mills at right tackle. Then we've got Bo Pribula at quarterback, Dakota Twitty at tight end, Cam Courtney as the designated kind of slot wide receiver, and Jaquan Gibson as the Z receiver. And then two kind of unique wrinkles here. So at X receiver, Rico Flores or Talir Coleman. And then Jakail Middlebrooks is listed as the number one back. And then the second string back is Peyton Lewis or Noah Vaughn or Xavier Brown or Zay Davis. All five main Virginia running backs have found their way onto a two deep, which is a testament to the depth of that group.
Oh, absolutely. It is a good problem to have when you have so many talented players, especially at a skill position, and you feel like you're confident enough to play all those guys. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, especially at a position like running back, you're not having to force a guy to have 30, 40 carries a game.
Right.
You can get a guy in for a series for 2 or 3 really good plays, and he's busting his tail, sub him out, and get fresh guys in the entire drive. And I think at the skill position, that is something that when you have talented players in those 2 and 3 spots, players can step up and then make a case to the coaches, be like, hey, I should be one of these guys that should be starting the game. And so that competition, I think, is very healthy, and it's something that will drive everybody, especially in those skill positions, to be better.
I think, James, that in your career, probably the wide receiver room at Delaware is probably the best comp for that. Am I right in thinking that? Like, there were just like at least 5 guys on the field that at any given time would just kind of take over the game. Talk about like how
Absolutely.
reassuring that is as an offensive lineman or just someone watching the skills go to work, having that ability to have so many guys go off in a game.
Well, we had an excellent group of receivers. It was led by guys like Thyrick Pitts, who had the opportunity to play in the NFL. We had, Gene Coleman, who also had opportunities in the NFL. And then you had guys like Brett Buckman, Jordan Townsend, and James Collins, Eddie Scanapico, Dylan Zimmerman. These were all guys who had vast amounts of game experience.
Yeah.
When it was my junior year, all those guys I just mentioned, with the exception of James, who was a freshman, all those guys had already played 10, 15, sometimes even 40 games at this point.
Yeah.
And so when you have that, it's a culture and it's an environment that when those guys were part of that room, it's not just one guy trying to get 8 or 9 guys to come along with them and do things the right way.
Mm-hmm.
It's you have 5 guys all trying to compete, all trying to get on the field at the same time, and then bringing those other guys who are behind them and underneath them to teach them how to do things the right way. And yeah, our that receiver room at Delaware was extremely special, and those guys were very fun to watch score touchdowns on Saturdays.
Well, I think this is the first time all year, or the first time in my watching Delaware Blue Hen football, that I'm not rooting for the Delaware receiving core to go off. I love how this offense is structured, just because like the starting, like your front six, offensive line plus tight end is so experienced, is so like ingrained in playing the way that Tony Elliott and Des Kitchings want them to play, that, it gives you kind of the floor of the offense. And then, we've got some high variance guys, some transfers, some guys that are getting promoted on the depth chart at the skill positions. They kind of set the ceiling. And so I feel like we can't really know what the ceiling is until we play against NC State and kind of see what this offense does. But I feel fairly confident that the floor is very high with that front six.
Oh, totally. I mean, the fact that all 6 of those guys that you had mentioned on the offensive line and the tight end are all graduate transfers or all 5th-year, 4th-year guys. I mean, that is something that, and 6 of those, and well, half of those guys are players that have been through the UVA system and have not transferred in.
Right.
And when you have that, like we mentioned, that cohesion, obviously Drake Metcalf transferred in last year, like that brings in so much value and confidence in a team, and especially in a coaching staff, that hey, we have guys in this group at all different positions that we can lean on, and then, like you said, raise the standard, raise the ceiling, raise the floor of all of what this team at UVA can do. And like you said, it starts up front. So these guys, to whom much is given, as much is expected. The pressure's on the offensive line this year to step up and continue to raise that standard, and best believe they're going to get everyone's best shot.
I feel like you've played with guys in the past that are a little bit reminiscent mentality-wise, like Bo Pribula. Like I feel like Nolan Henderson at Delaware had a little bow to him. Talk to me about playing with a quarterback like that and what Virginia fans can expect to see from a guy like Bo.
Well, I played with his brother.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So yeah, played with his brother. I mean, those type of quarterbacks, obviously Cade had some injury issues in his college career, but he was still a very talented quarterback. It is something that when you have the ability, it's not the fact that they're in terms of a scrambling quarterback, but the fact that hey, we can work on rollouts, we can do bootlegs. The defense has to account for the fact that you guys may do an RPO and he can take off the ball. That just gives you as an offense the ability to do so much in your playbook and do so much in how you want to attack a defense, right? It's great if you have a guy who's 6'5", 6'6", can look over the offensive line and throw the ball 50, 60 yards downfield. But if you have a guy who can move around the pocket, be confident, do all the different motions that you need to do, can be able to stretch the defense laterally, it just creates such a different advantage that then allows the rest of the players on the offense to shine. So yeah, like Nolan was one of those guys who I think was just extremely talented in the fact that he was able, despite what people thought was quote unquote undersized, he played more than up to his ability and more than what people were expecting of him. And I think we would all look at him as a leader. And especially when you have a quarterback that people rely on and people trust on and people look to for leadership, it just makes the rest of the game so much easier.
I was going to say, don't let anyone tell you that an offensive line plays the same for all quarterbacks, because if you have a quarterback that has that kind of like Jim McMahon quality, I think that's the one, like you know what I mean when I say Jim McMahon-ness. Chandler Morris has had that. Our guy Brandon Rainey at the Citadel had that. A guy who you knew was willing to play just as hard as everyone else on the field and play with that kind of dog mentality. The offensive line is going to block harder, and I would like to thank the University of Missouri for giving Bo Pribula a chance against an SEC defense to have to figure out a way to move in the pocket while not selling his offensive line out. That's
Yeah,
something any quarterback has to learn when they're moving through the pocket is how to scramble in a way that the offensive line isn't blocking for a guy directly behind them, but a guy that's actually trying to move through a B gap or on the outside.
absolutely. I mean, if you have it's a symbiotic relationship, right? If the quarterback isn't immediately taking off on the snap and isn't just booking it outside, that helps the offensive line play.
Mm-hmm.
If the offensive line play does well, the quarterback doesn't feel like has to rush through his progressions and then break and scramble out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it works both ways. And when you have that type of cohesion, that type of relationship, it just like I keep saying it, but it does make offenses look more successful. And when fans and people are watching games and they're wondering why a quarterback is scrambling on the media sides, well, that may be a sign that he's had issues in the past of that trust
Right.
of this. It's just like an instinctual thing that if you, as soon as you may feel pressured, you may want to scramble out. But if you just hold on for a second, you may that read, on the left hand side may come up right at that last moment. So to be able to sit in the pocket or know when to roll out or when to move is a skill set, is a thing that coaches in the NFL, scouts look in the NFL, coaches look in the NFL, and is something that does translate to the most successful quarterbacks.
Absolutely. And every offense going into a game usually tries to whittle down kind of key points, usually from anywhere from 3 to 5. Keep it digestible so that guys can remember it, can lean on it, and really emphasize it. And I picked 3 for the Virginia offense. The first, attrition is the mission. We will get into what that means when we get into the film. Number 2, win low pressure downs. Basically, the best third down offenses are the ones that don't get to third down. And then get explosive plays from the core concepts that make up your offense. Don't necessarily always try and get explosive plays from a flea flicker reverse, but get an explosive play from the inside run or from a base passing concept. James, when it comes to these points, is there anything you would add to this list or comments on these 3 points?
I think one of the things to add is just, don't beat yourself.
Mm.
This is the beginning, this time of year, right? Guys have the jitters. It's the first game. You're so pumped. You're finally able to block somebody and hit somebody that's not your own teammate,
Yeah.
right? This is something that a lot of guys get very tensed up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get tensed up and you're all muscled up and you're not really thinking, that's when the mental mistakes happen.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a false start, illegal procedure, not being on the ball when you should be off the ball for a skill position, right? Like these are the things that you need to realize. Hey, when we get into the game, breathe, right?
Yeah.
Go find a place for yourself as a player to set yourself down and then be ready to go, know your assignment, and then go attack at full speed.
Right.
So don't hurt yourself. Yeah.
No one has ever won a game on the first play of the game. Like, you do have to play another 59 and so minutes of the football game. So you want to get amped up, you want to get excited, but on the offensive side of the ball, you have to be ready for the marathon, not just the sprint of it. So that is a great point about, the crowd's going to be loud. It's going to be a popping environment. Like, if I were Des Kitchings, I think I might just make the first play on the quarterback's first sound, because I think everyone's going to be so ready to go. You might as well just take advantage of it, and then you can actually get into a snap count later on in the game.
Yeah. And you'll see, a philosophy of a lot of coaches, I think, is when you're in those moments, you look back to like the famous video of like Michigan was at like 2017, 2018, when they go to Penn State for the whiteout game.
Yep.
Right. And everybody, it's just so tense and it's just so loud. And then you have to burn a timeout, right? Go in there, you go break in the huddle. Hey guys, we're just going to do, 11 personnel, 12 inside zone to the right.
Yeah.
Something nice and easy just to get your feet wet and just to take the crowd nice, slow them down just a little bit. You don't need to come in there and, like you're saying, do a flea flicker or do like a sluggo double move, right? Throw a deep ball down the field, right? Build your offense. Give the guys the confidence to go in, understand what the feel is, right? Get them to see the defense as you go in through that first drive set. When you come back to the sideline,
Mm-hmm.
We can actually talk about this, not just, oh my God, what just happened? I can't believe, the game's starting and now we're behind. Right.
And the other thing is no one ever expects the trick play on the second play of the game. So,
Yeah.
you run inside zone, you get about 4 or 5 yards, and then you can run whatever double reverse flea flicker
Yeah.
pass because no one expects it on that. And, I think that a lot of Virginia fans, I think, had residual built up frustration with how the offense was being run from kind of the Tony Muskett, let's manage it games and the Anthony Calandria experience. And I feel like Dez made some serious strides as an offensive coordinator in 2025. And I think this offense is perfectly suited for kind of his growth as a play caller because everyone's always growing. No one is ever a static entity. And so I feel like this offense is going to maximize some of the things that when it came down to the wire and the chips were on the table, like the concepts that Dez leaned on last year, we can run very easily this year. I think of the Florida State game when we needed a score and Chandler Morris bangs his hand on an FSU player's helmet. And for 11 straight plays, we do nothing but run the ball. Like, this is an offense that will not only like be ready to execute that, this offensive line is going to be yelling at Dez all year. Please, can we just run the ball more?
Yeah. And with that, it's like, hey, we want it, right? We want the ownership, we want the responsibility. When you have that from, especially from an offensive line standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
where people talk about the offensive linemen being kind of like these awkward, silent guys. I think it's the most successful ones is the complete opposite.
Yes.
You don't have to be, a trash talker. You can do that, but it's the guys who have supreme confidence in themselves and each other and say, hey, put the game on us.
Yeah.
We want the responsibility. We're not going to shy away from the moment. We want to take this and face it head on.
And we don't have to talk about the ways that offensive linemen that we've talked trash in the past because it makes no sense to everyone else and it would definitely get this video demonetized. So let's get into some film. Like we mentioned last episode, we finally got access to Virginia all 22 film, and so we are going to show you some plays from last year's game against NC State, some plays that Virginia could do a little bit better on, some plays that Virginia did really well on, and some things that we think we can translate into the 2026 season. So when I talk about attrition being the mission, this is a stout offensive line group that is able to win at the point of attack with 5 RB1s. If this gets down to the point, attrition can be the mission. So just lean on the offensive line at various points. So here we've got in a situation where Virginia's on the 40-yard line. They've got about 6 to go, and it's a 3rd and 7. I don't love this play call. We get to a point later where, Virginia gets into a 3rd and 7 and they run the ball and it works. Like, I feel like this was not Virginia making NC State hit their fastball, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're hitting on 3rd and 8. What was it? 3rd and 8, right?
Yeah,
3rd and 6. They're running like a mesh concept that you see on the field. You see, the receiver on the bottom of your screen is going to motion, closer up the field, and then that's going to allow him to try to hit a little crossing move. The problem is, right, you see like there's a minute there where the receivers kind of jolt out of the way and have to zigzag out of the way.
Right.
That's something that you have to be able to have that timing out and know, hey, I'm going over the top, you're going over the bottom. But the problem is when you're facing a team that looks like they're in zone right here, mesh is one of those plays that's not the best look to do unless you have a sitting route that's going to allow that zone to spread. But in this look right here, it's hard to do that against a zone defense that's doing mesh here.
Right, and it's a 3rd and 6 in the 3rd quarter. Virginia has a 3-point lead. This is the kind of situation where, like, you can't always run the ball, but keeping the clock going is always something that's helpful. And so I think this was – I don't think the players were necessarily wrong here. I don't necessarily love the play call, like you mentioned, how this zone concept here. You can see number 9, Dak Twitty, start to sit, and then Chandler throws like he's still going to go.
He's still leading, yeah. And that's something that you have to be able to work on the communication and understand, hey, if it's zone, right, I'm sitting in between the defenders. If it's man, I'm going to continue to run out to have that defender follow me. And then you just have to be able to have that communication. And so I think that's something that you will have to be able to clean up as you go through this game because NC State's watching the same film. They're gonna watch this and see this is something that we can take advantage of where we can disguise these looks where it looks like that middle linebacker is going to be blitzing.
Mm-hmm.
He drops back out into coverage, and then that adjustment, the quarterback has to be able to adjust that on the fly.
And empty protection can always be a tough ask sometimes. Friend of the show, Jack Whitmer here, does get beat on the outside here. And he mentioned that the struggles of this game actually made him a much better player over the rest of the season. So, once again, first game jitters, some of this stuff you have to kind of get out of the way or kind of scheme to protect yourself against. I want to get into attrition being the mission in a good sense. This is 3rd and 7. And we run zone. Like, this is a chutzpah play call right here.
Yeah. So, it's outside zone, which means that the running back is going to try to hit this, on the outside shoulder of the tackle. If the defense is going to stretch and run to the sideline, he's going to have the ability to cut it back upfield on the play side, right? But as you see here, he does a great job on that cut there. But what's really important here is on this front side, the offensive lineman, as you'll see on this angle here, watch where they start on the ball and then watch how far they move the defensive line.
Yeah.
Right, especially on that front side. When you have that ability to dent a defensive line, that allows that running back to press that ball further up the field.
Right.
Instead of just running straight to the sideline, which then allows that rest of that defense to come in and swarm the ball. So if you're allowing that running back to press up that field, look how he presses, and then he's able to make a great cut off of that defensive line, off the linebacker there, and then just hit the hole and go vertical. So that's extremely important. My only critique of this, I saw this, the only concern is maybe you'd want to have the backside there with the center and the left guard there work on that linebacker who's blitzing on that backside A.
Yeah.
But with its outside zone, you may just want to say, hey, if he's going to run to that backside, great. We're just going to go up, climb up. And it was great to see the center here go up here and go find work as soon as he knocks over the second level. He's going up there. He's trying to find work. So that's good to see.
Yeah, Brady Wilson, the center, he's like 15 yards downfield. He's looking for work. He's finding safeties. It looks like Noah Josie, the left guard, gets beat here. This is actually a great rep of just kind of eating a zero nose as the left guard. This angle is perfect. Watch 77, the left guard, Noah Josie, just occupies the nose guard just enough to keep him from disrupting this play. And it goes for 10 yards as a result. I mean, shout out my boy Drake Metcalf also doing a good play over there on the front side. This is the kind of play that is so deflating for a defense on 3rd and 7 because this is a very day one install run play. And if you can physically get more than 7 yards on 3rd down, that is just going to whittle down any defense. There's the saying in the financial markets that the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. This Virginia offensive line can stay physical longer than the defense can stay solvent. Like this is something where we can continue to dial up the same seemingly irrational plays that don't seem to be very explosive in design and just continue to get big yardage as a result. This is one of my favorite reps from Noah Josie just because that is a hard ask. He occupies 2 guys there.
Yeah, we had an expression, at a bunch of different places, right? But if you're all wrong, you're all right, right? If everybody is doing something that's maybe not what exactly you want to do, but you're doing it full speed and everybody's in sync with it, even if it's not exactly what you want to do, it's better that than 4 guys doing something right and then 1 guy being completely dead wrong, right?
Yes.
So if we're going to commit to this where that left guard is just going to work on that nose there, and that is a hard block getting on that backside nose there
really
as a left
hard.
guard on outside zone, right? But if you can do that and you just say, hey, center, don't worry about this linebacker, go up there, climb, hit that play side defensive tackle, and then go find work, then you're all right. And then it results in plays like this. That's great to see.
Run it while we can because Noah Josie is one of the few guards in the country that can make that kind of attempt to occupy a guy. And then our second point was to win the low pressure downs. The best offenses are the ones that don't get to 3rd down. And on here we see a second down play where we just kind of overthink the throw a little bit. Like we're trying to place the ball rather than just throw it here to Dakota Twitty. Chandler Morris has plenty of time in the backfield here. He has a chance to maybe even run it or go to another check down. Like, this is kind of the one gimme play that really we should be converting.
Well, I think for people that seeing this from the offensive line, you know, the play that they're trying to run here, right? It's play action,
Mm-hmm.
but instead of just your normal, shuffle into your zone, we're going to have the left guard here pull like it looks like the offensive line's running power,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's just another way for the defense to kind of hold their feet for a second and try to see what they're doing. But if you watch here with the center, right guard, and right tackle, that pressure from the interior, although he doesn't get to the quarterback, that hurry there does throw off Chandler Morris's timing and his where he wants to exactly put it. So instead of putting it right on his body, right on his frame, he's throwing that ball up and out because he's feeling that pressure, right? So when you're on a play like this where it's play action and it's power, the right guard, right tackle, and right and center are all in kind of like a power gap pass protection. So
Right.
there shouldn't be anybody beating you penetrating from the inside because everybody's there protecting their gap. So if you're able to clean that up, Chandler's able to sit in there because there's nobody else pressuring at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? You see, he has plenty of time if that doesn't get thrown there, and he's going to be able to put that ball better.
Right. And worst case scenario on a play like this, you get 4 yards, which,
Yeah,
hey, 2nd and 6, we can win with that. We can get into 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, where we still have the whole playbook open. And like you said, number 90 here, the nose guard, touches 3 guys on our offensive line, but ultimately is able to get by all 3 of them. That's something that was ironed out later on in this Virginia season. So I think it's something that's not still a glaring problem, but definitely something to highlight in the first week of the season. Want to get to the positives now. This is a great throw here to Dylan Newton short on the outside. This is a chance to just convert the chains, move things on first down, and just continue to try and get kind of those 15-yard chunk plays that don't feel huge, like they aren't a streaking like 30-yard touchdown and they aren't a 50-yard run, but like this is the meat and potatoes of how an offense gets chunk yardage.
absolutely. And I think it's something, that type of play from Chandler right there, it's underrated, but that's what we're talking about when we see guys like Bo Prabula and Nolan Henderson, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not asking them to scramble 15, 20 yards, right? But just that feeling of being able to move the pocket just a little bit and then being able to set his feet just enough to put that ball right away from the defender, that's something that I think is extremely underrated. You see here from the offensive line, the center's calling out, they're going to slide to the right here in a 3-man slide. That center does an excellent job picking up that defensive end on that nose defensive end twist.
Yes.
And so when you have those things like that where you're in cohesion with an offensive line, it just gives the quarterback just an extra second to make that adjustment and be able to put that ball where he needs to put it.
The thing I want to see from Bo Prabula this year, a lot like Chandler Morris in this clip, is that even though he's moving in the pocket, even though he's being mobile, to still keep his eyes downfield, because sometimes you'll see a lot of quarterbacks kind of lower their eyes when they have to move and then focus on just trying to scramble and run. This is a play that not a lot of quarterbacks are able to make all the time because they're focused on, crap, I got to run. Whereas this is a tight window throw in man coverage. He is glued onto Dylan Newton short, the cornerback over here. And, it's a play that puts you in position to put you in field goal range at minimum. So you've gone from a 0 point expected outcome to all of a sudden now 3 at minimum, hopefully 7. And, shoot, man, Noah Josie ends up kind of getting out angled by the scramble against that tackle that stunts over. But, every quarter.
I was just going to say, this is something that's extremely interesting. If you watch her on the left side, they kind of run the same twist that they do on the right here, but it's a little bit later. The nose tackle here is a little bit more delayed in his twist. But if you watch this left side defensive end, he's running upfield and then immediately cuts inside, and then he's picking Noah Josie right there on that left hip. As an offensive lineman, when you get that pin on your hip, there is nothing you can do to recover back on a twist there, which is why it's so important, especially on the man side of a 5-man protection on empty protection. Your left guard and your left tackle or whatever side it is are on the same plane of field. Meaning, if your left tackle is set further deeper and your left guard is up on the line of scrimmage, and that left tackle's defensive end pins that guard, it's really hard to exchange players. So you got to make sure on the man side, you're setting on the same level. So if there's any twist, you're able to not only communicate it, but then also be able to pass it off without any issues.
Moving screen like that, I think they got that one from Will Wade, who's now in Baton Rouge. But,
Yeah.
every quarterback gets sacked like a beat away from the window opening up. And,
Yep.
this is an instance where, through mobility and just kind of floating over in the right way where he's still able to make a balanced throw, that's exactly what we're looking for out of Beau Pribula this year. For explosive plays out of core concepts, there isn't really a learning or bad example of this. So I went with one example out of a running play and then another example out of a passing play. And our first example here is our first real big explosive touchdown play. And James, this isn't anything special. This is a play that
No.
Virginia's run 100 times in like maybe a month of games. Like they run this a lot. It's just standard inside zone and ends up going for a huge play.
Yeah, I mean, you even see like the left guard here he kind of falls over, doesn't even do a great job of getting up to that second level.
Mm-hmm.
But just the ability to strain and go up there and just make that linebacker move
Mm-hmm.
just enough to have that running back be able to get that open space. And he's running his feet, he's pumping hard, right? He's not allowing that first contact from the defense to take him down. And that is something from a skill position, right? When you see that from as an offensive lineman, whether it's a running back, whether it's a receiver, whether it's a tight end, where you see them invite the contact.
Yeah.
He's lowering his shoulder, he gets that third hit, and he's shrugging it off. And then as soon as that happens, he's running and he's getting out of there. That is something that makes you want to play even harder for your teammates, and it's awesome to see right there. Like you said, it's not like they're running anything crazy. There's not anything revolutionary. This is just something where you see everybody trying to work harder than their opponent.
Right. I mean, a lot of offenses get into hot water when they try to engineer a play with the goal of it being explosive.
Yeah.
And the best offenses call plays in hopes of being productive and moving the chains and putting themselves in the best position. And then when you have special players like Jamari Taylor or like Noah Josie or Drake Metcalf or Mikhail Boley, they can just kind of make stuff happen. And when you have a athlete like that, this was kind of our first glimpses of Jamari Taylor being that special athlete. You're like, oh man, well, if we got this on inside zone, imagine what happens when we run something a little bit more explosive. I want to shout out Mikhail Boley getting inside leverage on number 54 here and just holding the wall up just long enough for Jamari to get down the field.
Yeah, no, this was great to see. And then you just see how everybody else, all the skill positions, they're run over, they're excited to see this happen because this is something where all 11 guys on the field are working hard. Everybody's trying to get a block in. Everybody's trying to do something to help this team and help Jamari Taylor get in that end zone. That's something really encouraging to see.
I want to shout out Coach Mims in the receiver room because this wide receiver room for Virginia this year is not highly touted in terms of its recruiting rankings or its portal rankings, but Mims, I thought, has always done a really good job getting these receivers to block, which is harder than you think. And like you see Jamal Edgerrin on the left side here, or top half of this screen, he's getting downfield. He's chugging. He's not taking this play off by any means. And so, it takes no talent to block with effort. And so
Absolutely.
for this group, like, there's no excuse not to help block. And, it pays it forward in terms of, giving a good look for the defense so that they think you're still just as aggressive on run plays and pass plays.
Without a doubt. Yeah, it's awesome to see.
And man, like we got to get more of the hog mollies running down the field as well because it cuts out right before I think they get down there. But man, on a big play like that, there's nothing quite like being an offensive lineman as a big play has just happened running down the field because it's the first time you can kind of open up. You're never really able to get to a full sprint on most plays.
Yeah.
So that is a lot of fun.
I was just going to say, we had a rule at Delaware when Coach Carty came in that he instructed all the people on the video staff when a touchdown like this would happen to not just cut the film immediately.
Oh, okay.
In fact, if you were on the offense, and I think it was on the defense too if they scored, but the offense specifically, if someone scored, all 10 players, besides obviously the guy who didn't score or the guy that scored, all 10 players then had to run towards him and had to touch the ball carrier that scored. And we had it on film. And so we made sure that every single week on Mondays or on Sundays when we would watch film, make sure, did everybody touch the receiver? Did everybody touch the running back? Did everybody touch the quarterback when he scored? Right. And it just shows, right, that extra effort to be like, oh man, I got to get down in there and celebrate with like, my guys. But then it also, from a skill position, you're going to wait and then be able to celebrate with the rest of the guys.
Right.
How many times do you guys see on games or highlights when a receiver scores, right, and he just sprints to the other side of the end zone and just leaves the rest of the guys not to celebrate with him, right?
Right.
Let the big guys come down the field. Let them celebrate with you. Let them do the lift up. That was one of my favorite things to do with guys
Yeah.
like Malik Grant and Sean Harris and Dejan Lee. Like, lift them up in the air and let them know that, hey, we got you, man. This is awesome.
Because guess what? Scoring points is fun. That's
It's
the
fun,
reason
man.
why we do all those awful summer workouts and the training camp practices. It's for
Yeah,
plays
yeah.
like this. Like, it's fun. And, also it teaches everyone to be downfield on a block, and you also never know, does someone Deshaun Jackson it right at the goal line? Like, can you fall on the ball? Like, there are all sorts of edge cases that would behoove all 10 players to hustle down the field. And just like vacation calories don't count, the energy you expend running down the field on a breakaway touchdown, that doesn't make you more tired. Like, regular sprints, those will
It
get you tired, but that's like a feeling of exhilaration. It's pure adrenaline at that point.
there is a moment though when you're looking, right, and you're, as an offensive lineman, if you see a big break down the field, right, you're looking to each sideline or behind you to make sure that there isn't a penalty thrown. Okay,
Yes.
because there is like that rule is true. It doesn't count unless someone gets a holding or there's some type of crazy penalty in the backfield, and then you got to jog back and then do another play.
The
That would be the worst case scenario. But in those cases when it's all clear, yeah, hell yeah, sprint down the field. You can go to the bench, get that oxygen tank, get the water, and sit down and enjoy the touchdown.
Yeah, that the run back after a penalty, that energy counts for double.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And then for explosive base plays out of a passing set, this comes out of the end of the game when we were driving down trying to make something happen before kind of that unfortunate interception. This is a pretty simple bench concept that we run here, and it's not anything necessarily special, but shoot, man, you get out of bounds in a 2-minute situation, you gain a chunk play. This is like clean operating procedure. No one had to do anything necessarily special or out of their wheelhouse on this play other than Jamal Edgerrin, who makes an outstanding toe tap catch. But, concept
Well,
wise, this is pretty like normal.
almost every single day, or you'll do it at least multiple times during the game week, right? You're going to practice these 2-minute situations,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's no surprises that when you get down to this game, hey, from this yardage, from this distance, on this hash, this is what we're going to run. So everybody knows when it comes to game week, there's no surprises, there's no shocks. That way, when you get into this game, once you've repped it in practice, you can then go full speed and give your best and be able to execute. So I think from an offensive line standpoint, they do a great job with the protection. It's only a 4-man rush, right? But Chandler Morris here has plenty of time. He's able to relax in the pocket. He's able to get his eyes downfield and go through his progressions, find the space in that zone or man concept or whatever. I wasn't able to see it. Looks like kind of like almost like a zone concept. They're kind of just kind of bailing out there, but he's able to get that ball there, and a great catch by the receiver there.
And when you are on the same page, all 11, down in, down out, it makes any mistake or mental error from the defense so much more magnified. You see here that nickel is like, what the heck happened? I think he believed that someone else was supposed to be covering Jamal, and he just kind of sat there and just watched him catch it.
Yeah. And something like that at 2 minute is critical. Like, you cannot have those type of mental errors. But when you see something like that on the other side of the ball, like, hey, we're going to take advantage of it, right? Like, he kind of bails in here. That's him. Like, he's got to take that. I don't know who else he's looking at for, but dude, you got to go get that, man.
I don't know if he was looking for a push off or,
Something.
and this, in a 2-minute situation, no huddle situation, the defenses aren't going to have time to call up the 3-man stunt with sim pressure. Like, everyone's going to be lining up base offense versus base defense, things you've scripted out, and it's just going to be who is able to make a play, who's able to focus on their fundamentals and keep their head. And one of the things I'm most excited about for this team is we were in so many 2-minute situations last year, and so many guys have come back in those 2-minute situations to be on this team. There's kind of a residual knowledge base that just gets built up, and this is a group that's going to be in a 2-minute situation, either ahead by a slim margin or down by a slim margin, and it's going to be yeah, we're going to go down and score. Or, yeah, we're going to get that first down and run down the clock. What do you mean? Like, this isn't something we have to, like, imagine ourselves doing. This is exactly like driving down here against NC State to put ourselves in a position to score or winning in overtime. And when you have that as a memory rather than a dream, it always
Yeah.
helps an offensive team work better.
Well, it's just like at the beginning of the game, right? It's just like how in the first play you're so tensed up and so amped up to go out there. Just like this in 2 minute, right? You're so amped up, you want to go down the field, you want to score. Being in those moments allows you to be confident and allow you to be relaxed and know what to do and know how to execute. So it's super important that you're not self hijacking your own ability and your own play. Being able to just execute and being able to do your assignments. So, like you said, you're not going to. I mean, you're going to have trick plays, right? But you're going to
Yeah.
have these concepts from either whether it's a receiver or an offensive line or a running back or a tight end. It's concepts you've ran before. There's no secrets. There's no surprises about what you're going to do. So
Mm-hmm.
when you hear that call, all you have to then focus on is, hey, I'm going to get to the line of scrimmage, look at the defense, know my coverages, know my pressures, see what's going to happen, and then respond accordingly, and
Yeah.
just go out there and execute.
I mean, in those low clock situations, you don't have the time for a long play call. A lot of these things
No,
are one word play
yeah,
calls. If you've never been in this situation, every team does a 2 minute period. Usually it's on Thursday in college football, Fridays 2 minute in the NFL, and you have about a rack of 10 plays, and it could be Shakira, it could be trackpad, it could be any number of names, and that name has a whole play kind of included in there from the offensive line blocking assignment, whether the running back is in the protection or whether he's running a route, and the whole route tree. And it's on the team to know that. And so when you have a team that's experienced like this, everyone is on the same page because this is something that's not new. And to your point, James, the spring transfer or the one transfer window in the winter as opposed to the summer window, these guys have repped this in spring ball. They've repped
yep,
this over the summer. They've repped this in fall camp. They now have the necessary number of repetitions to feel really comfortable in a low clock situation like this.
absolutely. Yeah, it's something that like, hey, you say the word, and oftentimes you may run these plays, these 2 minute plays, like maybe at the end of the first half,
Mm-hmm.
whether maybe it's something after you've had a huge explosive play and you're running down the field, and it's just, hey, let's just get something off fast,
Yeah,
right? Say the one word, everybody knows what they do. It's a really simple concept or simple play. Just get up to the line and we got to snap the ball and go.
and just get something going. And I don't know about you, James. I think this game will involve some kind of 2 minute situation, whether it's 4 minute or 2 minute. I think this is not the type of game where things will be in hand by the mid third quarter. Like, I think this is going to be a
No,
tight football game.
no, this is definitely going to be a dogfight. This is something where at the beginning of the year, both sides have a lot to prove,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not only to the fans, to the alumni, to the students, but to themselves.
Yeah,
Right? And so you want to make sure that you come out at the beginning of the season with that 1-0 on your record, because it just sets the tone for the rest of the season so much. And
absolutely.
not to say that other games don't count, they absolutely do. Everybody's going to give their best shot, but that to have that ability to know that, hey, we started off the season with a win, it just gives you the ability to stack more and give you more confidence. I think the line was at UVA was favored at like 5.5.
Yep.
This is going to be a close game. Make no bones about it.
Yeah. I think this is kind of one of those where, like, hey, the last team that has the football, I think, does this. Whether
Yep.
it's you score at the very end of the game or you have the ball and you're able to run this thing out. And if we zoom out from the X's and O's into the Jimmies and Joes all across Charlottesville, a win, especially an exciting win in the first game, kind of to reward the increased attendance that we're expecting and the good vibes that are rolling right now. Like, even if there are stumbles down the block, like, or down the line, this first game could go a long way into kind of revitalizing and like proving that this wasn't a fluke from last year.
Oh well, I mean, not only from last year, but I think the coaching staff and the guys are going to look at just NC State in general as a team that hasn't UVA hasn't had a lot of success beating historically, especially just from I just looked it up. Like since 2007, NC State has won 6 of the last 7 games.
Yeah.
Like this is something that the coaches and everybody's gonna be like, hey, we want to get this done. We
Hmm.
want to make sure that there's no doubt about it, and especially from last year, leading in, bringing that ability to behave. This wasn't just a fluke, and we're going to set the tone with a team that historically we have struggled against. And I think that's going to be a very exciting challenge. I'm super excited to see how this plays out, and I think they're going to do a great job going into this.
Absolutely. Well, James, thank you so much for your time tonight, guys. If you don't know, James does offensive line training in the Indianapolis and central Indiana area. So, I'm an analyst that has all 22 film and Final Cut Pro. James is actually in the trenches doing this. So, if you are interested in offensive line training and learning more and you are in the central Indiana area, please reach out to James. He is I'm very biased, critically biased. There's a major conflict of interest here, but James is the best of the best. Thank you so much for your time tonight, James.
Deuce, thank you for having me on, and go Who's.
Absolutely, and we are going to add something for guests that have already given a Bodo's order. I am coming up with this on the spot. New year, new question. James,
Oh
what is your Coors Brothers order?
man, takes me back. We have obviously being in Indiana, there is no Coors Brothers, right? Those will know it's a very mid-Atlantic chain.
Yeah,
For our bachelor trip, we went down to the beaches down in Delaware, and there is a Coors Brothers, no, maybe 20 minutes away.
yeah,
And throughout that entire weekend, I came back home and I was devastated that and realized that we did not go to Coors Brothers because it
yeah.
has been a while since we've been. I would say I'm not someone that goes too crazy with the ice cream flavors.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly would love a chocolate and vanilla swirl. Gotta get it in the cone. Give me some rainbow sprinkles. And if we want to even do a deep cut for those that maybe would know the story, on top of that, then I would have our brother John's ice cream after I had my own ice cream. For those that didn't know, John, we will probably tell the story at a longer detail, but our brother John, I think he still is, but had issues with lactose. So we would all get ice cream and he would eat like 3 or 4 licks and then he would look at me and be like, do you want this? Not to say that, listen, I was not coercing him into giving him his ice cream. This was fully him giving me his ice cream, being a nice little brother. I was never turning it down. So whatever ice cream he had, then I got to have seconds with the rest of his.
The easiest explanation for how all of us ended up on each side of the lines, I think, is that story right there, John.
Yeah.
But when we get John back in Charlottesville, we will have to reconvene. We'll go to Bodo's before the game, and then we will get some victory cores after. To our viewers, thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, it's clear that you appreciate what we do here on the 4-3-4 defense. I usually say you love UVA football, but we've actually gotten some really awesome feedback from some NC State fans who have watched our videos. So to the commenters from the Raleigh side, hey, thank you for watching. We try to be as objective in our analysis as possible. Our fandom is very partial, but we try to be as informed as possible. So if you've gotten enjoyment out of this content and you are a Wolfpack Nation person, then hey, thanks for watching and sticking with us biased Virginia fans. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. Have a great night and go Hoos.